Hello, and welcome to the Free Film School podcast. Free Film School is a non-profit organization that offers uninstitutionalized, free film and creative lessons for creatives in South Africa. This podcast is a snippet from one of our live classes on commercial treatments, facilitated by talented commercial director and photographer Jabu Newman. Hope you enjoy.
Hi everyone, so nice to be here. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm so excited to present to you guys. I'm going to be talking about directing and treatment writing and focusing, as Jenna said, on commercial treatments. So firstly, just an intro to me. As Jenna said, I'm a director. I'm in commercials, but I've done web series and short films and music videos before. Although I'll be speaking mainly about what a treatment looks like and is for a commercial space, a lot of it can be applied towards a narrative, whether it's a short film, a music video, or whatever. So let's just talk first about what is a director's treatment. So a director's treatment is a written and visual documentation that takes a viewer through the visual language, technique, and specific choices you as a director is making. So who is a treatment for and what can it be used for? So in commercials, a treatment is basically what you as a director make to pitch on a job. So in commercial world, whenever there is a brief from an agency, so say they have like a Nandos script that they want to brief out to directors, they always brief out 3 different directors. As those 3 directors, you then have a week to make a treatment, and that's your pitch. So you are pitching against the other 2 directors to win the job. So then you make a visual treatment, you take their script, and you basically explain to them, this is what you've given me, this is how I imagine it. And through that way, you sell yourself, you sell your ideas, and you pitch to win the job. After you win the job, you take that treatment and you basically have to deliver on that treatment. But it'll usually be a script. So it'll be like, let's say, a 1-page script, because usually commercials are between 30 to 1 minute, right? 30 seconds to 1 minute. They'll give you a 1-page script. You'll jump on a call with them where they'll tell you about the idea, the campaign, where it came from, what they were thinking. That's your moment to try and fish as many ideas as you can to ask them, oh, are you interested in this? Are you interested in that? Because when you're writing a treatment and you're pitching, you're kind of playing a guessing game. You're thinking what would they like, but what also do I want to do, and how can it work together? How can I add in my own ideas and things like that? So then you make your treatment. If you win your treatment, you have to deliver on that treatment. So even though it is a document that is just to win the job, it also needs to be realistic on what you can do and what you really want to do. When you are making a treatment as a director, it's actually the time that you are really figuring out what you want to do as well. So it's not just for someone else, it's also for yourself to put down all your ideas and what you want to do. If you are a producer, you take that treatment and you budget from that treatment. So you look at that treatment and you see, okay, my director wants to do this, they want to shoot here, they want to cast these types of people, this is how long it's going to take, this is how much it's going to cost. Then when you're in commercials, you as the producer, you write up a budget, and that's also it's a competition. You're seeing what you can do for the best budget. But also, if your director's treatment is amazing and you go over budget, sometimes you'll still get the job because the treatment was so good. Now, coming to documentary and narrative, treatments are often used when you are applying for funding. So when you apply for the NFVF or small grants or whatever, you then have to write a visual treatment to go along with your application so the funders can see, okay, this director has a vision. Your treatment is also what you give to your cast and your crew. So if you are a director and a producer, and let's say you're doing just your own short film, it's funded by yourself, there's no money or nothing, you don't have to send it to funders or agencies, it's just for yourself. That treatment is then to get people on board with your project. So you can send it to crew members and say, hey guys, we don't have a lot of money, but this is the idea, and maybe they're into it. It's also a time that you can take to, say, gear houses. Like with the Foxy 5, it was during, I was studying, we had no money. We made a treatment and we went to Media Gear House that has all the equipment. We showed them the treatment and the idea, and we said, please, can you give us gear for free? And they did. because they liked the visual treatment and they saw your idea. When I do a commercial treatment, because you're going so in depth with everything, sometimes my treatments are usually between 50 to 60 pages. Take in mind that some pages are just images to show what I mean. So it very much is up to you. And also with the visual treatment, you don't want to write too much. You also really want the visuals to show what you mean. Yeah, so the difference between a commercial and narrative, usually with commercial, you're obviously taking someone else's script and putting your ideas into it. So you're taking someone's script, you're trying to elevate it, visualize it, and imagine how you would direct it. When it is narrative, it's all your own ideas, so it's really important that you're showing how you're going to tell the story yourself rather than telling someone else's story. Okay, so let's start with commercial directors' treatments. Usually the first page that you have is called tone and approach. So this is where you're talking about the overall tone of the film. What genre is it? So with a commercial script, it could be a comedy, it could be a drama, it could be like more of, let's say, a documentary script where it's like an insert of a business or something. So at this point, you're kind of explaining how you imagine this story. So let's take with a comedy script. Nandos obviously has a lot of comedy scripts, basically all the fast food, let's say Chicken Licken, KFC, Nandos. And they give you a script. You then have to say, is this comedy the way that you see it? Is it satire? Is it witty? Is it dark comedy? Is it slapstick? Is it more physical comedy? How do you see? Because they're not going to tell you. They're going to give you the script and you're going to have to basically decide for yourself, reading the script, how you imagine it. Every director will have different ways of imagining things. I know one director who always, whenever she gets a comedy script, she tries to make it into a musical. That's her style and her take on it. I know one director who, whenever he gets a script, he always tries to put a child or toddler into his story because sometimes that wins people over. So it all depends on what your style is and how you interpret the script. Then you can talk about if it is more like a documentary script where you're going to focus on interviewing people and telling like a real natural story. Or you're going to talk about whether it's more like visual effects heavy. Is your tone approach to shoot everything in a green screen? Or is it to shoot out in real spaces? Naturalistic or rehearsed? Are you going to work with actors or real people? So that type of vibe. It's almost like the overall idea of how you interpret the script. If you were pitching or something, you would do a treatment for the entire series. Okay. But then if you were a director who was asked to direct one episode, you would do a treatment for that episode. But by that time, I'm pretty sure there'd be like an idea of what it's going to look like and everything. So you would try to stick to their idea as much as possible. So SFX, it's like special effects. So VFX is like visual effects that you do on the computer. Special effects is like in real life. So you have explosions on set, or you do like makeup that makes you look like you're an alien or something, rather than doing it on the computer. So that's also an interesting thing to talk about. Like, say you have a script that is about aliens. Are you going to try and make the aliens look like aliens in real life? And then as a producer, how much does that cost to get costumes and everything? Or do you just, as I said, shoot people on green screen and do that all post? How much does that cost? Then the next thing you'll talk about is cost. So you'll talk about what demographic are you speaking to? Obviously in South Africa, there's specific demographics that certain clients and brands speak to. Who is their audience? So let's say their audience is kind of everyone, right? But then whatever the script is, who fits that role? Is it like a middle-class family? Is it a lower-class family? Is it an upper-class family? Is it a young generation, an older generation? So all from that, you look at their script and you think, okay, these are the right people for this. You give some examples. Then you talk about if you want to cast real actors, you could put forward some real South African actors, because this industry is so small and because there's not a lot of money outside of commercials. Most actors and real actors do commercials. So you can put them forward. They can come to the casting and see if you like them. You can street cast if you feel like that's more important. You can choose between actors or models. So if it's a fashion campaign, you're looking for models, you're not looking for actors. If it's a comedy script, you're looking for actors. So street casting is someone going out on the streets and like, let's say walking down Long Street because you want to find cool young people, you know? So you're walking down Long Street and you're looking at people and you're asking them, hey, would you ever want to be in a commercial? You're giving them the details and seeing if they will come or not. A real casting, well, not a real casting, but an industry casting is when you ask like a casting agency to basically send out your brief and your treatment to all the modeling and acting agencies and saying, this is what the director's looking for, these types of people, send us these people. So obviously this is really important because if you say in your director's treatment, I want to cast, let's say, 18 to 25-year-olds who are influencers and YouTube people, and you're saying that to the agency, that then they will expect that. So then you'll have to send that to the casting director who has to find those people. Then you can also put forward people you've worked with before. You can put known or unknown people, and then again, celebrities and influencers. Obviously, when you're like pitching on a job, even with a film, sometimes if you're pitching to funders, it helps to obviously have like a known actor as part of your project, or someone that you're pushing for that's gonna like give the piece credibility or get an audience who's interested. So you think about that, who do you know, who could be right for the role? But then you also have to think about the fact that that comes with a price. So celebrities, actors, influencers are obviously more expensive than people that you're casting from an acting agency. So then if you want that, you have to motivate that, and the agency will then know, okay, but we're gonna pay extra for these people, but it's gonna work. Like one job that I pitched on was for Stimroll, and they really wanted a like celebrity, and I pitched, okay, maybe Shoma Josie, because at that time she was really big. Even though that wasn't ever in their budget, it was still something that they went for because she obviously has a lot of clout. And then you speak about performance. So this is closely linked with your casting and your characters. So, you know, that's just talking about how you want your actors to perform. If it is obviously a documentary or like a more real person story, you don't obviously want to rehearse your characters or anything. You just want them to be themselves and natural. So maybe you'll talk about spending a bit of time with them, talking to them, getting them feeling comfortable in their space. Or if you have a very like comedic role, you can talk about how you want the actors to perform, putting time together to rehearse with them. And maybe you as a director have a specific approach of how you work with actors. You know, some directors like to ask their actors to give like backstory or come with their own types of characters and their own interpretation of the characters. Some directors will give them like specific people. So even if for one job that I did, it was for a Nando's job, and it was like there was like this guy who is like kind of the boss of like a scamming association. So they were like, okay, what is like his performance? What should his performance be? So we looked at like The Godfather and how his performance was. And that's obviously a very different performance to someone who's like who's like a boss, like the Penguin from Batman, you know what I mean? Like there's different ways of performing different, like a villain or a grandmother or anything. So you then talk about what that performance is. So once you've kind of spoken about those overall things, then you come down to the idea. So this is where you break down the script, you add ideas or scenes into it, how you interpret the idea and how you're going to visually tell the story, how you're going to tell the story visually. So once you've spoken about your tone, your approach, your casting, your characters and your performance, you can now talk about the idea. So you'll take a line, and if the line says, let's say, 2 women leave the club together. So let's say that's the first line of their script. Then you can talk about, okay, what does the club look like? Where could you imagine these characters? If they're 18 to 25-year-olds, what is the kind of space they would leave or whatever? So you kind of like break down the script and add either your own ideas or visual references of how you imagine that. I just want to say that obviously every script is different, so sometimes things might not like add or come from the script that you don't, it doesn't always have to be the same formula. You can choose what's more important, where things go. And then once you've kind of gone through the idea, you talk a bit about the cinematography. So is the cinematography like, do you want to shoot it black and white? Do you want to shoot it color? Do you want to shoot it on a specific camera? Do you want to shoot it again in a studio or in real locations? Is there a specific style that you want to shoot it in? Like maybe you want to shoot it at a certain time of day. You kind of just imagine what the cinematography is. And this is, of course, also something that then when you get a cinematographer on board, they're going to look at your treatment and read this. So you can try and be as detailed as you want and like imagine that whoever's going to read this is going to follow this brief exactly. So like here's an example that I wrote for a treatment. I would love to suggest we use a mix of wide lenses to capture our environments and lenses with a longer local focal length that will help us feel close and connected with the players. So this was a sports commercial. We want to be right up in the action with them and not miss any intimate moments shared between the players. We can find fun and inventive ways to rig the camera to the body of a football player or runner, the barbell or our weightlifter raises, and the springboard our driver jumps off. When we go into hyperdrive, our pacing is ramped up. We will use in-camera transitions to move quickly from scene to scene, whip pans, spins, handheld movements, quick tracking in and out, while out will make our camera more dynamic and part of the story world. So the idea was like, it was this idea for Nike where it was like these women players and we're showing them kind of like in their moment. So I suggested like, if someone is a soccer player, let's rig the camera to her chest like this. So when she's running, the camera's like this and it's following her. Maybe if we have a weightlifter, we can put the camera on the barbell. So she's pushing it up like this. We're using lots of whip pans, so the camera's moving, it's handheld, it's shaky to kind of enhance the storytelling of their world. So that's one example of a sports commercial. Let's say it's an investment or bank commercial, which is obviously a bit more slick. Exactly. So you'd be like, we'll use slow tracking in movements, like the camera will move perfectly and it'll be smooth and everything. So you use the camera to tell the story. So once you've spoken about the camera, sometimes edit isn't necessary. If it's like a linear edit, you know, you don't have to speak on it, but maybe you're telling the story from the end to the beginning. Maybe it's non-linear and you're jumping through time. So let's say the agency gives you a script. It starts, 2 women leave the club, they're hungry, they then go to Nandos that's now open at 12 a.m. or something. Let's say that's the idea. Then it's like, do you start at the beginning where they're eating the Nandos and it's like, you're wondering how I ended up here. You go back to the beginning. Or do you just start at the beginning? So you can choose how you also tell that script. You don't always have to stay prescribed exactly to their way. Do you have a slow introductory intro? Like, do you have a moment, you know how often people talk about like, there's 3 shots intro in the beginning. A wide to show the space, mid to show your characters, close up to get into the conversation and the action. Do you start that way, or do you just start up close up, 2 people are speaking, then you show the medium, then you show the wide to show the space? How in the edit, whatever the story you're telling, how do you imagine editing the shots and the scenes to tell the story in a different or interesting way? So in commercials, you as a director, you can be a freelancer. It's very difficult to get briefs from an agency because with commercials, and the reason why you pitch and everything, obviously there's a lot of money behind a commercial. So they need to know 100% like you're gonna deliver. So it always helps to be with a production company that represents you. So a production company they have like a couple of directors on their rosters who they represent. The agency will then send the production company a script. Either they want you as a director, or they just send it to the production company and the production company puts you forward, and then you pitch on the job. But as a freelance director, it can be difficult because without that production company behind you, agencies, they might not trust like you as a director are going to deliver, because it's such a big job. You need to have obviously a producer, people behind you that's helping you. Yeah.
You have to do everything.
You have to do everything. Basically, once the agency give you the script, you pitch on it. If you win the job, you and the production company, you do everything. And you always answer and show back to the client. So you then are writing your casting briefs, you're looking at the locations, you're booking crew and everything. And all the time you have to go back to the client and show, this is who I want to work with, this is who I want to cast, this is where I want to shoot. And it all has to corroborate with your treatment, because if they say your treatment wins, they're buying in on that treatment. So that is then like the rule book that you're following. That's it. So you have to take responsibility for everything. Sounds intense, but when you have a team around you, everyone is helping you. And obviously if your treatment wins, the agency, they only want the best and they only want you to do well. So there's a lot of support, and there's people who are going to help you get what you want, because whatever you put in the treatment, obviously if you won the job, it's the right choices that you're making. So therefore, people will trust you. And then you can go into art directions and locations. You can say, again, I want to shoot in an abandoned warehouse. I want to shoot in a fancy club. I want to shoot in a house in Soweto, because that has a very specific architectural vibe. You know, depending on what the story is, you talk about it. And it really helps like speaking about specific places, because then people feel like, okay, this director knows what they're talking about. They know the space. They maybe know these characters. A big selling point as a director is putting yourself and your own story into the treatment. So if you get a script that isn't like, let's say, exactly what you're interested in, you can still find like maybe a funny story that happened in your life before, or someone that reminds you of this or something. And in your introduction, you can be like, okay, I remember the one time me and my friend left the club. We were so hungry, we couldn't find anything to eat, you know, just put yourself into it so that it feels like it's personal, authentic, and you are the right person to tell the story, because you have a specific viewpoint or, a different way of seeing the story. So that's obviously then art and locations, and then sound. So this gets like forgotten, but it's very, very important, especially with commercials. Commercials obviously often have music or something vibey to it, and the agency want to hear like what music you think would go for it. So you can put something like, oh, I think we need like a piano song because it's for the youth, or I think we need like a classic thriller song, or we need a very known classical song that reminds you of standing in a line in a bank, or we need elevator music to help with the comedy or something. So that's just a moment where you talk about what music you imagine. You can also have examples and play it for them. You can also speak here about voiceover. In a treatment, you can put any visuals or references from anyone. It's just a document that you're creating. You're not selling it or anything. So you can put music in there. You can put whatever you want in there. Obviously, when you get the job and you've shot and everything and now you're editing, yes, you have to get permission to use the song, and you usually have to pay for it. So like, music is such a difficult thing when it comes to commercials, because they never really have that much money for commercials. So sometimes they're like, oh, we'll just get library music. But we all know what library music sounds like. It's never good. So you really have to push like, we can't use library music. This commercial is for the youth. They're not going to connect with library music. They're going to find it boring and they're going to turn it off. We need a real amapiano track. It's going to be more expensive. We either maybe you have a homie who makes music. I have a friend who makes music who could give us a good deal. Maybe you really want someone famous like Durban Gogo and you really want to push for that. Those are all decisions that you can make. And it's like, I think the more that you do it, the more as a director you begin to understand how expensive things are. And when you pitch on a job, you know what the budget is. So the agency tell you, this is how much money we have. You and your production company, you then decide what are the most important things, like where are we spending all our money? Is it on famous actors? Is it on a very expensive camera? Is it on really great music? Is it on a location that we want to shoot in Mauritius or something like that? So once you do it more and more as a director, you begin to understand how much things cost. So then in your treatment, when you motivate for certain things, you know, we can afford this, so therefore it's a good option, or we can't afford this, but it is the right option and we have to do it. On-set sound is obviously recording actors and people in the moment. So that's like diegetic sound. So are the actors speaking the words on camera or is it a voiceover? You can chat to the agency. Sometimes they'll have a voiceover, sometimes they'll have a script where it's actually together. So diegetic is everything that you're recording right now on the set, in camera, on the shoot. Non-diegetic is any sounds you're adding at the end. So your sound person can add footsteps, can add a voiceover, can add music that's not on set. You would never really record music on set. You would put the music in afterwards. So you can talk about, okay, what are the sounds that I want to get in real time and what do I want to add? So let's take our script for the Nandos girls leaving the club. They're in the club. I want to record the crowd of people dancing and having fun. And we need to have like a very popular song so that it feels like a real club, whatever. And maybe the one girl says to her like, oh, I'm so hungry, let's go. You can say, okay, we'll record that on set, but maybe it won't be loud enough. So afterwards we'll have a session with the actors who will say it over again into like a microphone in a studio so that it's clear and clean for our edit type of thing. You don't have to be that specific in a treatment on those things. Like that's maybe not that important, but it's just something you can think about and talk to. Maybe maybe you talk about, I want to get some improv from the actors or whatever. So yeah, that's that. And then you talk about the voiceover, and with the voiceover, you also talk about who is the person doing the voiceover. So like if someone is doing a voiceover, it's obviously a character. It is a person who has a voice. How do they say that voiceover? I'm trying to think of like famous examples. Like let's think about Salsi, Salsi for yourself. That time where it was like that sounded like a white woman with a whisper or whatever. That was obviously a very particular choice that a director or someone made. And then sound effects is whatever you want to add in. Like if it's a comedy script, do you want to add like effects of sounds that enhance the comedy? Maybe you want to add like a laughing track or something like that. So you just think about also how the sound tells the story in a way. And then you come to your conclusion, kind of. You can also speak about grade a bit, which is like the color of the film, what the colors are like. I don't know if you guys have spoken about grade at all. And in this conclusion, you kind of say a nice little note like, thank you so much for the opportunity to pitch on this job. I relate to it so much, blah, blah, blah. I love KFC, whatever. You really sell it so it ends on the high note so that they feel like, wow, this director is excited about the project. They love the idea, because in the end, the agency, they're also like choosing someone that they're going to work with for the next month. So they also want to feel like they can connect with you, they can talk to you, and that you're as passionate about the job as they are. That's kind of taking you through what different things a treatment can speak of. That is specifically for, let's say, a commercial, a director's treatment for a narrative and documentary thing. Obviously, those same things can apply. But, if it's a documentary, you can speak more to like the actual like area or the people that you are talking about. So you can also you can choose between obviously getting references and images from the internet, or you can go out and shoot those images yourself. When you are in commercials, as a director, you don't get paid to do it. I know. It's insane. You don't get paid. Basically, you make the treatment, and if you win the job, obviously it's worth it because you are the director and you get paid to direct it. If you lose the job, I'm so sorry. All that work was for free, but it wasn't for nothing. It is practice. It is an opportunity to get introduced to the agency and show who you are. Even if you don't win a job, they might think like, okay, maybe Jabu didn't win this job, but she's right for her next job. For this one commercial I'm going to show you that I just did, it's a Standard Bank commercial. I pitched on 2 Standard Banks before that I lost. But in the end, I got the 3rd time I pitched. So as a director and the producer, you don't get paid. But there are other jobs that come with researching. You can be a researcher. So you can get paid to literally go on the internet and find images for the director. In the commercial world, it's really busy and competitive. So a director could be doing 3 treatments in a week. So researchers is someone who basically looks at the treatment and thinks like, oh, this script that the agency sent reminds me of this commercial or this movie or this TV series or whatever. And then you go and you get videos and clips and things from those things. So usually a researcher, if you are someone who watches tons of films, tons of commercials, tons of TV series, it's you, then you would be a good researcher because you would have all these references, and like some commercial directors, they're so busy that they don't even get to watch stuff. So it's like you need someone to help you with that. So that's the one thing you do it's called a researcher. You basically just go on the internet and you spend days downloading photos and videos for the treatment. Then you can get someone who does the layout and design. So that's someone who has a computer, who can work on Keynote, PowerPoint, InDesign. It's someone who might make websites, or someone who studied graphic design or something. They then can make your treatment look really beautiful. Obviously, this is in a commercial space because a production company is going to pay for someone to do this. You as the director won't pay unless you are unsigned. If you are with a production company, they will pay for that. And you don't ever pay that back. That's just a cost that the production company takes because it's an investment to win the job. Because obviously, people like to look at nice things. If your treatment looks nice, you might get the job just because it looks beautiful, which is kind of crazy, but yeah, that's how it is. So a layout design person is someone who basically actually makes the document. They choose the font, they choose just how it looks. And then you get the writer, so you can hire someone to write it for you. But you could also be that person. So if you are a good writer, you could get a job in research writing the treatment. So you'll write as if you're the director, and you'll start writing, hi, my name is whoever it is, so excited about this job, da 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 da. Obviously, you are constantly in comms with the director and the producer, so you're just writing it for them in a way. So those are the opportunities that you can get and do, and then obviously you get the director and the producer.